In business today, three things to know. First, out of balance. The U.S. trade deficit grows to the biggest level in more than 6 years. Why this is likely to tank the nation's GDP, and we'll look at the impact more imports have on U.S. businesses. Then, it's Small Business Week. Coming up, how one group is helping minorities launch new businesses and how business ownership is a path to prosperity. And it's Cinco de Mayo, a holiday, rightly or wrongly, that rivals New Year's Eve for drinking in the United States. Tequila sales alone are said to double on May 5th. And we'll meet an expert mixologist to stir up some quality cocktails. Arise Exchange starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. It's possible that investors started the tequila shots early this May 5th because stocks sold off in droves, mostly amid new worries over Greece and a surprise trade deficit report in the United States. Let's take a look at the final numbers. The Dow closing down 142 points. That is off the lows, however, to 17,928, below the 18,000 level. The S&P 500 down better than 1%, and the Nasdaq off 1.5%. Greece helped drive those numbers down as the IMF is now threatening to cut off a new financial lifeline unless Eurozone countries agree to further write down debts of Greek debt. Some of the top stocks we're watching today. Freddie Mac reported a steep drop in net income to $524 million for the first quarter. And the mortgage giant also says it will cut its dividend to the U.S. Treasury next month. The U.S. government owns much of Freddie Mac closing down a penny. Walt Disney reported earnings that beat analyst expectations. The company says the growth was fueled by a rise in sales at its theme parks and products related to the movie Frozen. Disney down 22 cents. And taking a look at commodities, gold up 5.50, oil over the $60 a barrel mark. Oil is rallying. Saudi Arabia's oil chief, get this, was asked about the price of oil, and he said it's up to Allah. And some other key economic data out today. The U.S. trade deficit rose to its highest level in 6 years to $51.5 billion. Economists say the wider than expected trade deficit prompted the government to revise its estimates of 0.2% growth in the U.S. gross domestic product for the first quarter to a 0.5% contraction. Let's talk now about the trade deficit and what caught most of us by surprise. All right, we are going to get to our guest in a few minutes on the phone. By the way, coming up, the former chief economist of the U.S. Department of Labor is going to walk us through what the trade deficit means to both businesses and consumers. Coming up, minorities on the path to entrepreneurship. You're watching Arise Exchange. Stay with us.
The best way to predict the future is to create it.
There's a special breed of achievers out there that are called tomorrow's people, the highly creative ones who live in the future. They imagine what will be and strive to make it happen. They're bold. They refuse to wait for the future. Tomorrow bends and conforms to their ideas. At Access Bank, we share the same sentiments. We've been able to grow our bank to become a leading player in Nigeria with a strong presence across the continent, adopting best practice in everything we do. Our mantra for success is simple: speed, service, and security. Those who shape tomorrow, strive for, and demand perfection. At Access Bank, our service culture of speedy response and drive for excellence is the blueprint for creating customer experiences that will echo for generations. Come, let's work together and take tomorrow.
Unrest continues in Ferguson, Missouri. Exactly what happened to Michael Brown Jr.'s memorial. The NFL fallout continues. Why does this video change the game? President Barack Obama met with congressional leaders today.
He does not need congressional approval to carry out the strikes.
The only language understood by killers like this is the language of force.
Do I want to have a draft? No, because I don't want to have war.
Hello and welcome to Arise America. I'm Debbie Turner-Bell.
The great thing about Arise Entertainment 360 is that we cover the 360 of entertainment: food, fashion, lifestyle, culture. We're able to cover it all. And the thing I love most about the show is we're able to do a stunning combination of high and low. So we can talk about Rihanna on the red carpet, but we can also speak about high art with people like Sanford Biggers and Hank Willis. We actually spend quality time with our guests and we really get to know them. It's really intriguing because we get a 360 look at our guests.
Welcome back to Rise Exchange. Time now for our business ticker stories making headlines across the nation and the world. Secretary of State John Kerry makes an unannounced trip to Somalia. The trip is designed to send a signal to the al-Shabaab terrorist group that the U.S. will not abandon the country as it struggles to rebuild after 2 decades of civil war. Kerry becomes the first U.S. Secretary of State to visit Somalia. Los Angeles is suing Wells Fargo. The city claims that the bank opened unauthorized accounts for customers and then charged them bogus fees, which damaged their credit. It's alleged the bank created a fee-generating machine and refused to shut down fraudulent accounts even after complaints were made. Wells Fargo is blaming rogue employees. The bread company Panera is cleaning out its pantry. The national chain plans to rid its food of artificial additives by 2016. The company released a no-no list of additives on its menu, including something called titanium dioxide. Panera becomes the latest restaurant chain to ban the use of many chemicals in their food. And it's not often that new countries are born, but while you were sleeping last night, the world did get one new nation. Welcome to Liberland. There it is on the map. Europe's newest country / tax haven, the Free Republic of Liberland. That's its official name. Was until now an unclaimed slice of land between Serbia and Croatia stretching less than 3 square miles, which actually, by the way, makes it larger than Monaco and Vatican City. Though not officially recognized, the fledgling state has topped 300,000 citizen applications. They all can't fit there, so why so many? The answer? No taxes and little government. I know a few camera people here who are going to move there. In fact, the country's slogan is live and let live. We're highlighting small businesses this week and talking to organizations impacting entrepreneurship. One of those groups is Power Moves, a national initiative seeking to boost minority entrepreneurship. Joining us now is Carla Harris, Vice Chairman of Global Wealth Management at Morgan Stanley, and Earl Robinson, President of Power Moves. Welcome to both of you to Rise Exchange, and thank you for coming here. This is a really interesting group. It began in New Orleans, and I'm going to ask you why and what was your success record there?
Yes, well, actually, Errol is the mastermind behind Power Moves, but Morgan Stanley was involved because we're in the business of bringing great companies to the market, both the public market and the private market, and bringing leaders to our investor community and connecting them with institutional capital.
And let me ask you about that, because for too long, large banks have been accused and investment firms have been accused of not supporting minority entrepreneurship.
And quite frankly, what makes this partnership very special is Morgan Stanley saw the benefit and the upside of inclusive innovation and supporting minority entrepreneurship very early on. So they were the first institution that said, listen, what you're doing in New Orleans is wonderful, but you should take inclusive innovation on the road and it should be national. So they underwrote our expansion in our programming and activation in Detroit.
And you started in New Orleans, and now you're in Detroit, which has one of the toughest obstacles, certainly, to climb. Yep. It is entrepreneurship. It is small businesses that lead people to prosperity, isn't it?
Absolutely. Small businesses employ the vast majority of folks in the country. And small businesses and medium-sized businesses generate a significant amount of personal wealth for individuals. So our thought was, while the Fortune 500 and 100 are going to do well and prosper and the capital markets are there for them, we needed to build something that was specifically for emerging industries, small businesses, and entrepreneurs.
Carla, this starts, though, on the education level, getting people interested in entrepreneurship, that they can go out there and take the risk. So how do you do that before you ever get them any money?
Well, I have to tell you, Andrew, I think people are, in fact, interested in starting their own business. The issue is access to capital and access to the information around how do I scale after I originate, how do I think about building my businesses with the right people. So I think that this is a great combination because obviously we have the know-how in terms of how to get to capital, how to prepare yourself so that you are attractive to sources of capital. And what Power Moves has done is they have a very scalable model of knowing how to identify the right entrepreneurs and actually do all the due diligence so that they are ready, frankly, for both institutional and individual capital.
What kind of companies are you looking at? What are the specific sort of wheelhouses that you're looking at to invest in?
So we focus on 2 verticals, tech companies and high growth companies. So you'll see everything from advanced manufacturing companies to advanced logistics companies to iPhone apps. So it's a fairly broad range, health and beauty products, a fairly broad range of high tech, iPhone apps, and high growth companies.
I looked at the notes. You're saying that Detroit is trying to reclassify itself as a tech city.
Exactly.
Which sounds like pretty hard to do.
It's somewhat hard to do. However, they're getting it right in that what they figured out is the GMs and the Fords of the world are always going to be there. But there's a bit of a cap on the number of employees that they'll have going forward. So the future of Detroit, quite frankly, lies in, I should say, small and medium-sized businesses growing in that city, tech businesses growing, and hiring folks in that region.
Carla, the knock on the banks right now, whether it's their fault or the government's fault, is that they're not lending money at historically cheap rates, by the way, because there's too many regulations, there's too much paperwork to go through, and they're hoarding the cash for when interest rates rise.
Well, I think you're starting to see now, and certainly you're starting to hear in popular business press that's actually changing. And I think there are banks that have been out there, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, that have been extending capital to small businesses. And as you know, Andrew, small businesses were the strongest generator of new jobs throughout the financial crisis. So I think things are certainly starting to shift, and we have certainly seen a shift in our business, no question.
And do you think that's from a top-down strategy at Morgan Stanley that is saying get more money into all businesses and minority businesses?
Oh, no question about it. And as you know, we're not a traditional bank. We are a bank holding company as a result of the financial services company, and we do have one of the largest banks now in the world. And we have a top-down strategy that says let's get capital out in the right hands and let's bring great opportunities to both our individual and our institutional investors.
How much money have you given so far?
We're not lending in that sense of the word. We actually are trying to provide equity sources of capital.
Oh, so you're putting people together.
Which is, frankly, Andrew, the hardest capital for entrepreneurs to get. If you have a good credit status, you can get loans, but getting that equity capital has really been the challenge for both women and minority entrepreneurs, and that's where we are being quite helpful.
Earl, walk me through the process here. There's a small business that is interested in participating.
So we do national outreach to small and medium-sized businesses that are high growth or high tech. We screen, call it 500 or so businesses a year, and we shrink that population down to a group of about 100. And we do calls and video conferencing with all of those companies, and we shrink that group down to a core group of 20 that will then vet, and we'll put them through, if they're pre-revenue, what's called a boot camp. And if they're generating revenue, we put them through pitch competitions, one of which, or quite frankly, 2 of which Morgan Stanley has sponsored.
What is the obstacles that you face?
Quite frankly, there are obstacles around perception. If you think about, generally speaking, high growth and high tech entrepreneurs, theoretically, they've looked one way for about the last 15 years. And we're showing the marketplace that there's no kind of ethnicity or gender that has dominion over brilliance. So we're bringing a different type of entrepreneur and brilliance to the market.
Are you focusing too much on tech? Don't we need to be doing other things in this country as well?
Which is why, quite frankly, we're tech and high growth. So you'll find maker companies, you'll find advanced manufacturing companies, transportation, logistics.
Retail.
We've looked at food service, we've looked at retail, health and beauty products. So we're somewhat diverse because we think that they're great entrepreneurs in a number of verticals.
Okay, and people can learn more at powermoves.org.
PowerMovesNOLA.org.
PowerMovesNOLA.org. Thank you so much. Earl Robinson, president of Power Moves, and Carla Harris, vice chairwoman of Global Wealth Management at Morgan Stanley. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
With you, both of you. Ahead, why the trade deficit caught most by surprise. You're watching Arise Exchange.
There is a reason Africa is called the new frontier. What was once potential is now an opportunity ready to be seized. Once revered for our resources, today's wealth lies in our people. People who build the cities that shape the future. People who know an idea in one place means business in another. A generation for whom technology means there are no borders, no boundaries. We are the new lions in a brave new world, kings of the urban jungle. And there's a bank that puts the world in our pocket and the future in our hands. UBA, Africa's global bank.
Okay, let's go back to the trade deficit now and what caught many economists by surprise. Diana Furchtgott-Roth is director of Manhattan Institute's economics21.org and is a former chief economist of the U.S. Labor Department, and she joins us now by phone. She is also the author of the upcoming book, Disinherited. Diana, welcome to Arise Exchange.
It's great to be with you. Arise is the best.
Well, appreciate hearing that. Thank you so much. Come back anytime once you say that. Let's start with basics of what happened here and why this big imbalance of so many more imports than exports.
Well, the trade data came out today, and it showed that imports had increased and exports hadn't increased as much as people had thought. So the trade deficit jumped to $51 billion in March, which is the largest since October 2008. And the way GDP figures are measured, that means that GDP growth in the first quarter will go from up 0.2% to down 0.4%.
And we'll have to obviously factor that in as one of the key reasons when we look at GDP. It doesn't necessarily say that the U.S. economy was even worse than expected. But let me ask you about the core reasons for this dramatic imbalance in the trade deficit. Was it what's going on the West Coast ports? Was it the strength of the dollar?
Well, it was probably some of each, but I should first say that this is nothing to worry about. Imports, the increase in imports just means that we are doing better than the rest of the world, and that we wanted to buy more goods from the rest of the world. It's as though you went shopping at Bloomingdale's or Macy's, and you bought a lot of things, and, you paid for them. You paid for them with money, and that's fine. It just shows how well you are doing. The thing that's wrong is these GDP figures and the artificial notion that our trade deficit, our trade should always be in balance. The fact that we are doing better, our GDP is growing about 2%, Europe is growing about 1%, China and India are slowing down. The fact that we can import more because of our strong dollar is something positive. It's not negative.
What does that do? It's good for consumers, but it's not necessarily good for businesses that are in the exporting arena, including manufacturing, right? When you're talking about auto manufacturers, for example, this is not necessarily a good report for them.
Right. Well, the strong dollar does mean that their exports become more expensive. So this is not necessarily good for them. It's good for consumers, but it's not necessarily good for exporters. Part of the reason for the big jump in March was the slowdown at the West Coast ports. I don't know if you remember, but a lot of goods that importers had wanted to buy to be on the shelves for Christmas couldn't be purchased because of that slowdown and the disruptions. So when the slowdowns were over, when the union had negotiated its contract, then these goods started coming in March.
So maybe to some extent these trade deficit numbers were artificially incorrect in the first place because of a one-time event with this port situation.
That's correct, yes. And a lot of people think that the economy is growing in a positive direction. It's not shrinking. So the 0.4% is more of a measurement issue. The negative 0.4 percentage point that it's going to shrink in the first quarter is more of a problem with measurement. Economists aren't very good at these measurement issues, as John Tamney has pointed out in his new book, Popular Economics. So in the first quarter, government spending shrank. That meant GDP was smaller, but really that means that normal businesses have more to spend because there's less government borrowing, so that's not necessarily a negative. So all of you out there should take with a big grain of salt these GDP numbers. You need to look below the big headline number. And I don't think that the trade numbers that came out this morning were really that bad.
Diana Furchtgott-Roth from the Manhattan Institute. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Great to be with you.
And coming up, New York's mayor found out that the subways don't always run on time. What New York Mayor Bill DeBlasio did next, however, makes him our favorite person of the day.
Well, Arise is the only network that really covers comprehensively the African diaspora. It gives people in other parts of the world of color a chance to know about people here in the United States, us to know about them, and the world to know about us. So it's kind of an educational experience for everybody involved. Getting to know people through stories, through personal stories. You really get a chance to know what people are actually all about, what communities are about. How are we different? But more importantly, what commonalities we all share.
Apple unveiled new products today. Did it meet expectations?
Apple stock is up 20%.
The White House says it has proper measures to contain the spread of Ebola. This seems to be, in some ways, exploding. What are officials saying?
We remain focused on working with our partners on the ground to stop the epidemic.
Enhanced measures have been put in place in Africa and the United States.
This is hitting home in a very real way, and I think, we need to be concerned.
Hello and welcome to Arise America. I'm Debbie Turner-Bell.
Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention, not for the right reasons. Today, it is New York City's Mayor Bill DeBlasio, who doesn't quite understand how the subways work and that they don't just work for him. After facing some ridicule for not riding the subways like previous mayors and most New Yorkers, DeBlasio decided to join the strap-hanger ranks and took the R train to City Hall. Like many New Yorkers, subway delays angered him. Unlike many New Yorkers, he took it out on the people who work for him. In an email that DeBlasio wrote and accidentally copied a New York Times reporter on, good job, he complained that, quote, "We waited 20 minutes for the express train, only then to hear there are major delays."
Poor baby.
That's called a Monday in New York, Mr. Mayor. Then he went on to complain that this is knowable information, and had he known it, he would not have taken the subway. Knowable information? Maybe to the mayor, who can call the MTA, which is the organization which runs the trains. As for not taking the subway, again, not an option for most New Yorkers. Then de Blasio directed his staff to coordinate all future subway rides with the MTA. Don't you wish you could do that? Before I left for work today, I should have called the MTA and said, "Guys, I'm headed to Arise News. Please make sure the express train is waiting for me." De Blasio has been criticized for not spending enough attention and money on New York's transit system. But here, instead of saying he would work to fix the subway for all New Yorkers, he only appeared interested in fixing it for himself. And so for being a whiny, ill-informed strap-hanger, Bill de Blasio is our favorite person of the day. Coming up, we'll pour ourselves some margaritas and ring in Cinco de Mayo. You're watching Arise Exchange. Stay with us.
One of the great things about Arise Entertainment 360 is we have this Arise to Your Health segment, which really focuses on the holistic approach of being healthy. So we do everything from working out to juicing to getting in shape by doing fun exercises like bouncing on a trampoline or wearing these bouncy boots on our feet where we're jumping all over the set. We've done karate, we've danced the weight off, we've done just about everything. And of course, I love when we eat on set, but we do it in a very healthy and clean way.
Because we live in a global, interconnected world, business news no longer stops when the markets close on Wall Street. And what we've discovered over the past few years of the financial crisis is that events and news that happen even in the smallest countries impact the United States and the world at large. As we bring together experts and analysts and thought leaders and CEOs and companies across many industries to not only provide the macroeconomic view, but news everyday people can use. Once again, they said I had to wait till the end of the show to drink. It's Cinco de Mayo, a big holiday in the U.S., but contrary to popular opinion, not so big in Mexico. The 5th of May is the anniversary of the Mexican Army's victory over France at the Battle of Puebla during the Franco-Mexican War in 1862. Now that the history lesson is over, let's do some drinking. Beer and tequila sales hit a yearly high on this day. Last year, beer sales on Cinco de Mayo topped more than $600 million, beating both St. Patrick's Day and Super Bowl sales. Tequila sales have more than doubled in the last decade. Beverage consultant Brian Van Flandern joins us now. He's a top mixologist, and best-selling author. He also recently created the cocktail menu for the relaunching of the Palm Court in the iconic Plaza Hotel in New York City. I think I'll hit that place right after the show. Brian, welcome to Rise Xchange. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.
And thank you for bringing the drinks, as always. Before we get to them, though, we have to have a little bit of background and history here. Why is Cinco de Mayo so popular in the United States and not so popular in Mexico?
You know, it's funny, you go down to Mexico, it's only popular in the touristy areas for the Americans. It's, 1862 was a very minor skirmish where the Mexicans took over a French fort at the Battle of Pueblo in 1862, as you mentioned. The thing was, the next day the French took it back. So the reality is the Mexican Independence Day is September 16th. And what happened was an American company, Corona, of course we all know Corona, it's actually a Mexican imported beer, but it's U.S. marketed based, and they set up a massive ad campaign and promoted the holiday.
It's almost a Hallmark holiday.
It's almost like a Hallmark.
And Corona has done very well.
Oh, yes.
But they sparked interest in other spirits. I was surprised to learn how popular tequila is.
You know, in 2003, annually in the United States, we were selling under $100 million of tequila. Now we're at 2015, over $2 billion annually in sales. What's happened is tequila's gone through this revolution, this renaissance, and it rivals some of the best whiskeys, some of the best cognacs in the world.
That's really interesting. So you're actually buying tequila for the quality of the tequila. You're looking for labels to do so. Do people drink tequila mostly straight, or do they mix it? And you're a mixologist, so I know you're going to have a bias on this one.
Well, at $2 billion, you got to figure it's a very versatile spirit. So yes, I mean, the margarita is the #1 ordered cocktail in North America. I think Americans are ordering 185,000 margaritas per hour in this country. It is the #1 most popular, and it's not vodka, it's not rum, it's tequila for the #1 ordered cocktail. And then you've got these great 100% agave tequilas coming out. They have set up a denomination of origin. There's very specific growing regions.
Where is tequila made?
It's made in there's only 5 states in Mexico, but primarily in Jalisco, which is central Mexico, and it's broken into 2 geographies, the lowlands and the highlands, very different geographies, very different terroirs, very different flavor profiles. And just in 10 seconds or less, there's 3 different types of tequila. There's Blanco, Reposado, and Añejo, and then now there's Extra Añejo. And the only difference is how long they've been aged in barrels, and usually American oak barrels, or reclaimed American whiskey barrels.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they use reclaimed whiskey barrels. They do that for cognac, too, I think. So, all right, so let's talk about the drink so we can drink it.
Yes, well, that's what we're here, right? So here we got a margarita. Now, traditionally, margarita is made with a cheap tequila, some lime juice, and triple sec.
This is good.
Thank you. Yeah, this is called a Tommy's margarita, originally created in San Francisco by a gentleman by Julio Vermejo. He says it's just 3 ingredients: fresh squeezed lime juice. Fresh is the key. And then we're going to be using
and by the way, it's interesting because limes are a third-party beneficiary, if you will, of this holiday.
Yes, we all remember last year limes quadrupled in price because the Mexican cartels came in and took over. They've dropped now that everyone's buying American, so go figure. But yes, fresh lime juice. Then we're adding agave nectar, which has become hugely popular in recent years. It's a sugar substitute. It has a lower glycemic index. It's healthier for you. And and it's made from the agave plant, the same plant used to make tequila. So it's a logical pairing. So you got the acid sugar, and then last is using higher quality tequilas. Today we're using Casamigos. This is George Clooney's new tequila. George Clooney and Randy Gerber. Usually when a celebrity endorses a tequila, you're like, oh, I don't know about that. But in fact, apparently George is a huge tequila fan. And
so he's been involved in the making of this?
Yes, and Randy Gerber, his partner, they're best friends. They own a house in Mexico together, and they got together and created a great tequila.
As a mixologist, does it either bother you, or do you grasp it as a challenge in explaining people why they should go for the top shelf material?
It's always a challenge, but in tequila, you truly get what you pay for. I mean, the cheaper stuff, we can get into different styles, but the bottom line is, the cheap stuff is called a miso, where they're adding 51% agave. The other is sugar cane or corn, and they're adding caramel and sugars. So that's why we get that wicked headache. If it says somewhere on the label...
So you get what you pay for literally the next day.
If it says 100% agave anywhere... Exactly. If it says 100% agave anywhere on the label, 100% agave, you know you're dealing with a better quality stuff.
How important is this holiday to liquor sales overall?
Tremendously. As you just mentioned.
I was surprised that's as big as the Super Bowl.
Bigger than St. Patrick's Day, bigger than the Super Bowl. It's really become, as you said, a Hallmark holiday. It's a way to celebrate. And obviously, we want people to drink.
In the middle of the week, though.
Yes. We want to drink responsibly. That's key. But yes, it's become a drink.
Take the subway home, as we learned. Brian Van Flanderen, thank you so much. This is fun.
Always a pleasure. pleasure.
All right.
Cheers.
Coming up on Rise Exchange tomorrow, why divorce rates rise with a better economy. And it's the attorneys cashing in. Let's take a look at the markets once again. Red arrows across the board. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Thanks for watching Rise Exchange. Have a good evening, everybody.